It was a quiet Sunday afternoon, the kind where time seems to move slower, and even the air feels heavy with peace. I had just left my old friend Peter's house after helping him fix his garden gate. The drive home was calm, the streets nearly empty, lined with trees shedding the last of their golden leaves. I had no destination other than home, and no thought more pressing than what Linda might be cooking for dinner. Linda, my wife of 32 years. She was the kind of woman who could fill a room with warmth just by being in it. Or at least that's how I used to feel. We'd had our share of rough days, like any married couple, but I always believed that beneath it all, we were solid, unshakable. That's why, when I turned down Birchwood Lane, the road where my daughter Emma and her husband Daniel lived, I didn't expect my world to shift off its axis. I only meant to wave, maybe drop by to say hello if anyone was home. Emma and Daniel had been married for 5 years, and though Daniel had never quite fit the image I'd had for my daughter's husband, I respected her choice. She loved him, and that was enough for me. But as I slowed near their house, something caught my eye. Parked right by the front gate, unmistakable even from a distance, was my wife's car. Linda's silver sedan, the one with the tiny scratch on the rear bumper from last winter. My first thought was innocent. Asterisk, maybe she came to visit Emma too. Asterisk, but then I remembered Linda had told me she was spending the afternoon with her sister in town. Her sister lived in the opposite direction, almost 40 minutes away. A faint unease began to crawl up my spine. I pulled over a little further down the street and killed the engine. The neighborhood was silent except for the faint rustle of leaves and the occasional bark of a dog. I sat there for a full minute, staring at that car, hoping I was mistaken, hoping there was an explanation that would make sense. But curiosity, or maybe instinct, got the better of me. I stepped out of the car quietly, my heart thudding louder than my footsteps. As I approached the gate, I noticed the curtains inside were half drawn, and the faint sound of laughter drifted out, familiar, bright laughter that I knew by heart. Linda's laugh. I froze. The sound of her laughter, light and unguarded, had always been a comfort to me. But in that moment, hearing it here, in this asterisk house, it felt wrong, out of place, like hearing a lullaby played at a funeral. Then came another voice, lower, masculine, one I recognized instantly. Daniel. I edged closer, toward the side of the house where the living room window was slightly open. The air felt colder now, though the sun was still shining. My hands trembled as I reached for the wall, steadying myself. I didn't want to listen. Every instinct told me to walk away, to turn around, get in my car, and pretend I'd seen nothing. But something deeper, older, rooted in love and trust. Needed to know the truth. Their voices grew clearer. Linda's tone was playful, almost teasing. You really shouldn't say things like that, Daniel. What if someone hears you? Daniel chuckled, that smug, careless laugh that used to make me grind my teeth. Relax. No one's around. Besides, I like reminding you that you're mine when we're together. The words hit me like a sledgehammer. My knees almost gave out. Linda's soft giggle followed, and then the unmistakable sound of a kiss. A faint moan, a gasp. I felt my chest tighten so hard it was difficult to breathe. My vision blurred, my body cold. For a moment, I genuinely thought I might pass out. I backed away from the window, my hands shaking uncontrollably. Every part of me screamed in disbelief. This couldn't be real. Not Linda. Not Daniel . But their voices continued, drifting through the thin curtain of air, cruel and tender all at once. I wish we didn't have to hide like this, Linda murmured. Just a little longer, Daniel replied. Emma's business trip next month. That's when we can go away, just us. She trusts you so much, Linda whispered. I hate lying to her. You'll get used to it, Daniel said softly. You've already lied to Michael this far. asterisk Michael, asterisk my name. On his lips, spoken so casually, as if I were a fool, a joke, a man too blind to see the truth, something inside me broke. I stumbled backward, barely aware of where I was going. The world seemed to spin, the house, the trees, the driveway all melting into a blur. My breath came in shallow gasps, my heart pounded in my ears. I didn't know how long I stood there before I forced myself to move. I turned away and walked to my car, each step heavier than the last. When I got inside, I didn't start the engine right away. I just sat there, staring at the steering wheel, tears stinging the corners of my eyes. I hadn't cried in years, not even at my father's funeral. But this was different. This was grief of another kind, the kind that didn't just break your heart. It hollowed you out from the inside. As I finally drove away, I caught one last glimpse of Linda's car in the rear-view mirror. The image burned itself into my mind, a symbol of everything I'd lost in the span of 10 unbearable minutes. By the time I reached home, the sun was dipping below the horizon. I parked, sat still, and stared at the empty passenger seat beside me, the place where Linda usually sat, humming softly to the radio. My fingers curled into fists. I didn't know what to do, what to say, or who to be anymore. The woman I loved, the woman I shared a life and family with, was betraying me with the man I'd welcomed into our family as a son. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, replaying their words over and over in my mind until every syllable felt like a blade. And though I didn't know it then, that was the night something inside me changed forever. The night love died, and something colder, quieter, far more dangerous took its place. The morning after I heard them together, the world didn't look the same anymore. The sunlight felt cruel, the air colder, and even the birds outside my window seemed to mock me with their songs. Linda came home just after 10 that night. I had pretended to be asleep on the couch, though my eyes were wide open, staring into the darkness. She tiptoed in, humming softly that same tune she used to hum when we were young, when life still felt honest. She smelled faintly of Daniel's cologne. I could have said something then. I could have leapt up, confronted her, screamed, asterisk. How could you, asterisk, but I didn't. My body stayed still, frozen under the heavy blanket of disbelief. It wasn't cowardice, not exactly. It was something more complicated, something closer to shock. For the next few days, silence became my prison. At breakfast, I watched her pour my coffee, her hands steady, her smile practiced. "You're quiet this morning," she said on Monday. "Didn't sleep well," I muttered, forcing a half-smile. "You've been working too hard again," she said, brushing my shoulder lightly before walking away. Her touch made my skin crawl. Every time she spoke, every time she looked at me, all I could hear was asterisk, his asterisk voice, Daniel's low whisper, his laugh, the sound of their secret. I felt like a ghost in my own home, moving through rooms that still smelled like her perfume, living with a stranger wearing my wife's face. But worse than that was the thought of Emma, my little girl. She called me that Tuesday evening, cheerful and innocent as ever. "Dad, are you and Mom coming to dinner this weekend?" "Of course," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Daniel's been so busy lately," she sighed, "but I think he's planning something special for us soon." I wanted to tell her. God, I wanted to tell her so badly. I wanted to scream through the phone, asterisk, "He's planning something, all right, but not for you," asterisk, but I couldn't do it. How do you destroy your own child's world? So I said nothing. The silence grew heavier each day, pressing against my chest like a stone. I stopped sleeping properly. I'd sit up late into the night, staring at old photo albums, birthdays, vacations, Christmas mornings. There was Daniel in almost every one of them, smiling beside Emma, beside Linda, beside asterisk me. Asterisk what a fool I'd been. On Thursday evening, I told Linda I had to work late. Instead, I parked a block away from Daniel's house and waited. I told myself I wasn't sure what I was doing, But deep down I knew. I was looking for confirmation. Proof, something tangible to hold onto, so I'd never again be able to convince myself that this was just a nightmare. At 7:42 p.m., Linda's car appeared. She parked in the same place, the same silver sedan, the same quiet betrayal. I stayed hidden in the shadows, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly, my knuckles turned white. I watched her walk up to his door, her hair glinting under the porch light. Daniel opened it, smiling that smug, unbothered smile. He kissed her before she even stepped inside. That was it. No doubt, no denial. The truth was right there, framed in the soft glow of his porch light. I felt something inside me solidify. The pain didn't vanish, it condensed, like molten steel cooling into something sharp. I didn't cry that night. I didn't scream or break anything. I simply sat there, pulled out my phone, and took a photo. One, then another. The camera clicked quietly, a witness to the end of my marriage. When I got home, Linda was already asleep. I stood by the bedroom door, staring at her silhouette under the covers. For a brief, cruel moment, I thought about how peaceful she looked. As if guilt hadn't even brushed her soul. I whispered to the dark, "Why, Linda?" But the dark never answers. The next morning, she was cheerful again, humming as she made breakfast. Emma called. She said, "She wants to go shopping this weekend. I might join her. You should." I replied quietly, "You should spend time with her." She smiled. "You're not coming." "No," I said, staring into my coffee. "I've got some things to take care of." And I did. The silence that had once suffocated me now began to serve a purpose. It gave me time to think, to plan. The first days after the discovery, I'd been a broken man, aimless and drowning in hurt. But now the pains started to form a pattern, a plan. I wasn't ready to confront them yet. No, that would be too easy, too quick. What was betrayal, if not patience turned inside out? I began watching more closely, small details. Linda started wearing new perfume, lighter and sweeter. She laughed more, texted more often, always smiling at her phone. Emma noticed it too. "Mom seems happier lately." She told me one day. "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "She does." Each word was a dagger I swallowed, but I endured, because a strange clarity began to grow inside me, the clarity of a man who had nothing left to lose. One evening, I sat alone in the study, staring at the photos on my phone. Linda and Daniel on his porch, their bodies close, their faces lit by stolen joy. I should have felt rage, but what I felt instead was focus. If they thought I was blind, I would let them believe it. If they thought I was weak, I would show them patience. I'd loved Linda for more than half my life. I'd welcomed Daniel into my family, trusted him with the one person I cherished most. They had stolen more than my love. They had stolen my peace, my pride, my faith in goodness. And someday soon, they would learn that the quietest man in the room is often the one who's already decided how the story will end. That night, as I finally turned off the light, I whispered to the dark again, but this time my voice was calm. "Not yet," I said, "but soon. There comes a point when pain no longer bleeds, it hardens. It becomes something sharp and deliberate, something that hums quietly beneath the surface, waiting to be used." That's where I found myself in the weeks that followed. I stopped questioning why it happened. I stopped asking myself what I did wrong. There was no logic that could make sense of what Linda and Daniel had done. The why no longer mattered, only asterisk. What came next asterisk did. I began to plan. It started small. Observation, patterns, the rhythm of their lies. Linda told me she was visiting her sister every Thursday evening. That much I already knew. But now I started noting times, routes, excuses. Every trip matched perfectly with Daniel's free evenings. I even followed them once, though not too closely. They met at a small motel on the outskirts of town. She stayed for 2 hours. then came home smelling faintly of lavender soap. Not the brand we used. I didn't take photos that night. I didn't need to. The image burned itself into my memory so vividly that no camera could have captured it better. Meanwhile, Emma kept talking about Daniel with such innocent affection it broke me every time. "Dad," she said one evening while we had coffee together, "I think Daniel's been stressed. He's been distant, but he's trying." I nodded, swallowing the bitterness that rose in my throat. "Sometimes people show stress in strange ways," I said quietly. "You'll see what kind of man he is when it matters most." She smiled at me, not knowing those words carried a promise. I spent my nights in the study. Linda thought I was working late, but what I was really doing was piecing together the threads of a web she couldn't see. I started with Daniel's public life. He managed finances at a mid-sized construction company. I'd always admired his ambition, even if I never quite trusted his charm. Using quiet connections, an old colleague of mine who worked in the same industry, I began asking questions. Subtle ones. I learned that Daniel's company had been experiencing discrepancies in their financial reports. Small, almost invisible sums disappearing. Nothing had been proven yet, but the whispers were there. Daniel, it seemed, was not only unfaithful, he was dishonest in more ways than one. That was my opening. Through careful maneuvering and more than a little luck, I convinced Emma to let me help her with their household finances. She was happy for the help, especially since Daniel was too busy. I didn't tell her my real reason. I just needed access, and with access came discovery. Within a week, I found irregularities. Daniel had opened a separate account under a fake name. Small transfers at first, then larger ones, amounts that added up to something ugly. Some funds came directly from his company. Others from Emma's savings he was stealing from my daughter. The betrayal that had once felt like heartbreak now became fuel. I printed every record, every transaction, every lie. I saved the recordings of Linda and Daniel's phone calls she didn't know I'd overheard through the thin walls of our home. My pain had turned me into something new, patient, calculating, precise, a man of quiet vengeance. I didn't rush. Revenge, I'd come to understand, wasn't about speed, it was about asterisk timing. Asterisk, I waited another month. I let Linda and Daniel grow comfortable again, let them believe their secret world was safe. I played the part of the oblivious husband. I laughed at her jokes. I kissed her cheek before bed. Every touch made my skin crawl, but I endured. Because soon they would learn what it meant to betray someone who had given them everything. The opportunity came unexpectedly. Emma invited us all to dinner. She wanted to celebrate Daniel's supposed promotion. Linda was thrilled. She dressed carefully, her excitement almost childlike. I could see it in her eyes. She was nervous, not because she feared me, but because she feared being caught in some small, accidental way. Guilt, when it lingers long enough, begins to smell like fear. That night I arrived early. I brought a bottle of wine, the same one Linda and I had shared on our 25th anniversary. It seemed fitting, a symbol of what once was. Dinner began pleasantly enough. Emma laughed, Daniel charmed, Linda smiled too easily. I barely spoke, waiting, listening. My heart pounded, but not from pain anymore, from control. When the plates were cleared, I stood up, pretending to reach for the wine glasses, and said, before dessert, "I think we should toast." Emma smiled, unsuspecting. "To what, Dad?" "To honesty," I said softly, "and to truth, the kind that always finds its way to the surface." Linda's face paled slightly. Daniel's hand froze on his fork. I took out my phone and placed it on the table. "I've been keeping a little record." I continued, my tone calm, almost gentle. "Would you like to hear what your husband tells your mother when you're not around, Emma?" Her brow furrowed. "Dad, what are you—" Before she could finish, I pressed play. The room filled with their voices. The recording was clear. Linda laughing softly, Daniel whispering her name, their plans for their next rendezvous. Emma's face drained of color. Her fork slipped from her hand and clattered onto the plate. Linda gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Michaels," she began, but I raised my hand. "Not done yet." I pulled out a folder and tossed it on the table. Inside were the bank statements, screenshots, and transaction histories. "You've been stealing from your company, Daniel, and from my daughter. I've already sent copies to your employer. You'll be hearing from them soon." Daniel's expression shattered. "You don't understand." "No," I said coldly. "I understand perfectly. You take what doesn't belong to you, whether it's money or someone's wife." Linda burst into tears. "Michael, please stop." I looked at her, truly looked at her. The woman I'd loved for most of my life sat trembling, her eyes wide with shame. Once I would have felt pity, but pity is a luxury for those who haven't been destroyed. "You wanted to hide in silence," I said quietly. "Now you can drown in it." Emma's sobs broke the heavy air. Daniel reached out, but she jerked away. "Get out," she whispered to him. "Both of you, get out of my house." Daniel stumbled to his feet, his face ashen. Linda followed, reaching toward me as if to touch me one last time, but I stepped back. Her hand fell uselessly to her side. When they were gone, the house was silent except for Emma's quiet crying. I stood there, heart pounding, not from satisfaction, but from exhaustion. The truth had finally been spoken aloud, and it had broken everything. I knelt beside my daughter and held her. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to feel the grief again. But it was different now. It wasn't weakness. It was release. That night, I walked out into the cold air and looked up at the stars. For the first time since that cursed afternoon outside Daniel's house, I could breathe. But even then, I knew the story wasn't over. Daniel would face justice at work. I had seen to that. But Linda, she would have to live with the ruins of what she'd done. And I would have to live with the knowledge that the woman I once loved had died long before I ever caught her lying. Silence filled my house after Linda left. Not the heavy kind that hurts, but the calm, cooling quiet that follows a storm. The air no longer carried her perfume, the faint hum of her voice, or the echoes of a life I thought I'd built on trust. For the first time in years, I could hear myself think. I didn't see Linda for several weeks after the dinner. Emma stayed with me, her eyes swollen from crying, her movements mechanical. Every day she asked the same question, how could they? And every time I gave the same answer, because some people mistake kindness for weakness. But I didn't tell her the rest, that I'd made the same mistake too many times to count. Daniel's downfall came swiftly. By Tuesday morning, his company had received the anonymous envelope I sent, complete with documentation of his fraudulent transfers. By Friday, his name was mud. He was dismissed under ethics violations, and soon after, whispers about legal consequences began circling like vultures. Linda called me 3 times that week. I didn't answer. Her first voicemail was pleading, "Michael, please, I need to talk to you." It wasn't what it looked like. Her second was broken. "I made a mistake. I don't even know why. Please, I just want to see you." Her third was hollow. "I'll leave you alone. I just wanted to say I'm sorry." I deleted all 3. There are apologies that come too late, not because the words are wrong, but because the person you were when you needed to hear them no longer exists. The man Linda had betrayed was gone. The one left behind was colder, quieter, but infinitely more certain of who he was. #****, rebuilding Emma ****, for weeks. Emma hardly spoke. She went through the motions, eating when I told her to, sleeping in the guest room, staring out the window for hours. I'd see her fingers trace her wedding ring, only to stop halfway. One evening, I found her in the backyard, sitting on the swing her mother and I built when she was a child. The twilight was soft, painting her in shades of gold and sadness. "I don't know who I am without him," she said quietly. I sat beside her. "You're stronger than you think," You were his reason for lying, because even he knew you were too good to lose honestly. She looked at me, tears glimmering in her eyes. How do you move on from something like this? I took a slow breath. You don't move past it. You move through it. And one day, you look back and realize the pain didn't destroy you. It carved you into someone who can never be fooled so easily again. She nodded slowly, and for the first time since that night, she reached out and took my hand. That small gesture was worth more than all the vengeance I'd ever imagined. *******. Linda's fall, *****. It was almost poetic, the way Linda's life began to unravel. Her friends, the same people who used to admire her grace and charm, withdrew after the affair became whispered gossip. Emma refused to speak to her, and I gave her no reply when she wrote. I'd thought I would feel satisfaction watching her world collapse. But when I saw her by chance one afternoon outside a grocery store, carrying a small paper bag and looking far older than her 56 years, I didn't feel triumph. I felt nothing. She looked up and froze when she saw me. For a moment her lips parted as if to speak. But she didn't. She just nodded faintly, her eyes wet, and turned away. That was when I realized revenge doesn't always roar. Sometimes it ends in a whisper, the soft, almost merciful silence between two people who know it's over. *****. The gift *****. Months passed. Emma started seeing a therapist. She sold the house she'd shared with Daniel and moved into a small cottage nearer to me. I helped her fix it up, painted the walls, replaced the old door, planted new flowers in the garden. Every stroke of paint felt like cleansing something dark from our lives. When she wasn't looking, I opened a private trust fund for her, half my savings, locked under her name. I never told her. She'd find out one day, and I wanted that discovery to be her quiet inheritance, proof that not every man who loves you takes something away. That was my real revenge, ensuring my daughter's future couldn't be destroyed by anyone's betrayal again. ******. Linda's letter *****. About 6 months after the dinner, an envelope appeared in my mailbox. The handwriting was unmistakable, Linda's. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won. The letter was simple. Michael, I've spent every day wishing I could undo what I did. You didn't deserve it. Emma didn't deserve it. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed to tell you that what you did that night, showing me who I'd become, saved me from becoming worse. I live with the weight of it every morning, and maybe that's how it should be. I hope in some small way you find peace. You always deserved more than what I gave you. Linda. I read it twice. Then I folded it neatly and put it away, not out of sentiment, but closure. Forgiveness wasn't mine to give. She would have to find her own. *****. A new beginning *****. A year later, Emma hosted a small family dinner in her new home. It wasn't fancy, pasta, laughter, and warmth. Halfway through the meal, she smiled at me and said, "You look peaceful, Dad, happier." I thought for a moment before replying. Maybe happiness isn't what comes after revenge. Maybe it's what comes when you stop needing it. She tilted her head. You never told me what you did after that night, how you made peace with everything. I smiled. Peace isn't something you make, sweetheart. It's what's left when you stop fighting ghosts. We toasted to that, to beginnings, to healing, to the strange beauty that sometimes grows out of heartbreak. Later, after she'd gone to bed, I stood on her porch, looking up at the night sky. The stars were faint but steady. I thought of Linda somewhere out there, alone, of Daniel, probably facing the wreckage of his own choices, and of Emma, sleeping peacefully for the first time in months. That was my victory, not their ruin. Her healing, my quiet. Revenge, I realized, doesn't have to be cruel to be sweet. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply living well unbroken, unbitter, and beyond their reach. Asterisk, asterisk, final line. Asterisk, 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 betrayal taught me how easily love can be lost, but revenge taught me how quietly dignity can be won. Asterisk,